Welcome to Project Quiver, a father-daughter journey across the globe to capture the artistry and spirit of the world's finest traditional bow carvers. I'm Todd, the father. Ella is my daughter. Together we're on a mission to create a stunning coffee table book that profiles more than a dozen master bowyers and their unparalleled skill. For each chapter, we travel to the bowyer's workshop, carve a bow under his guidance, photograph his woodcraft in detail, and share his story here on the Salish Wolf podcast. The book is called Quiver, The Art of Life Through Bowcraft. And this journey, our living story, is Project Quiver. So I heard about you between 1 and 2 years ago. My parents live in Sebring in Florida.
Oh, really?
And she messaged me one day or called me saying that she was at the hairdresser, and our hairdresser was they were chatting and they were talking about bows because of me. And then our hairdresser said she knew of a bowyer who lived nearby, and maybe is related to you or something. I don't know.
Sounds like my wife's sister, Becca.
Okay. Yeah. And so
Okay.
my mom told me about it. What's that?
What's your mom's name, if you don't mind me asking?
Karen Howard.
Karen Howard. It sounds familiar. I'm sure my wife would know, but she's in the main part of the house with the boys. But
yeah,
that small world, man. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. So then I checked you out, and I was like, oh yeah, he's legit. He makes some really good stuff. So.
Oh yeah, appreciate it, man. Really cool story behind how this all happened. But
we'll jump into it.
Oh, absolutely. So when I started, it pretty much started for me when I was a young kid. I've always had that fascination and interest in bow and arrows. My dad used to watch these Westerns growing up, and I was always fascinated by the Native Americans in there and the bow and arrows they had in the shows. And so that's kind of what inspired me to kind of get into it. And as a kid, we would whittle down these cabbage palm branches, and if you want to call them that. And they were super easy to work with a knife because they're green and they're very soft wood. And so my brothers and I, we would whittle those down. And at the time, we were drying our clothes on a clothesline. And so we would cut my mom's clothesline, and we would get the nice braided cordage inside, like the outside part of the rope.
Yeah.
And we would make our bows from there. And we did that for many years. And after that, I took a break from it. I kind of stopped for a while. And my grandmother bought me this solid fiberglass kids bow. And I still have that to this day, by the way. It's about 25 or 26 years old now. And so I shot with that. And at the time, I didn't know they were cedar arrow shafts that it came with it, but they were just these super light wooden arrows. And I probably lost them all within the first month of having the bow, just shooting them into the woods, just missing my target, and kind of just put everything away for many, many years. And a little over 9 years ago, I had the urge to get into bow making again, and I specifically wanted to get into the bow making for hunting. And one day I just told my wife, I was like, I want to make a bow and arrow. And she just kind of looked at me like, what are you talking about? And I was like, no, like a legit bow and arrow. Like, I want to make a bow and arrow and I want to go hunting with it. And she's like, sure, yeah, if that's what you want to do. And so then, I hopped on YouTube University, as I like to call it, and started looking into bow making. Found a video of Billy Berger. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him or not.
No.
But he has a phenomenal, it's a 3 or 4 part series on bow making. And I was just kind of blown away by what he was doing. He was working with Osage. I had no idea Osage was even a thing. And come to find out, it doesn't grow in Florida. So I'm like, oh, that sucks. And when you're watching these videos, and I probably watched that series more than any other bow making series ever to this date. I was just really intrigued by what he was doing, and I thought it was a very well designed format that he used and how he went about the process and everything. And as I kept watching them, the algorithm would put other bow makers into it would put them in there at the end of the videos where I would see them, and I saw Pine Hall longbows on there, and it said Master Bowyer, and then something else on there. So I clicked on it and I delved into that. And at the end of the video, the first part of that series, it had Mike Yancey's website on there. And so I looked into it and saw he was selling bow staves and did a little bit of research, found out that hickory was kind of a really good beginner bowyer wood. And the rest is history. I purchased my first stave from there, got some string wax and green and black spool of B55. And the original beeswax that I bought 9 years ago, I have a tiny piece left of it, but I'm keeping that just as like a little souvenir. And I kind of delve into that um, from that point on, and I was just addicted right away. I was gifted a very old antique draw knife from one of my coworkers at the time, but I was too scared to use it. I didn't know how to use it, and so that very first build I did was with a really cheap set of wood rafts from Harbor Freight, which is like a local hardware store where I live, and I probably spent well over 100 hours on my first bow,
Wow.
and it was a broomstick. I wish I had pictures. I'll have to look into to them and I can send them to you. But my handle was still not finished. It had really sharp edges on it. There was no shelf on this bow, and my tips were, I'm not even joking when I say they were still probably about an inch thick. At the last inches, they're about an inch thick, and the tiller was terrible. It shot bows, and I mean that sucker had to be in the upper 60s
Wow.
poundage wise. And I didn't know anything about arrows, and so I went to Walmart and bought compound arrows, and I'm shooting them with the vanes, and the flight on these arrows are just so crazy, and like it was just insane. But I was just so proud of that bow, and I wish I still had it. But I left it in the shed from a place we were renting at that time, and we went away for about a week, and I didn't realize there was holes in the shed, and I left it on the little countertop where I was working on bows, and it rained for like a week straight, and when I came back, the bow was just soaking wet, and I thought it was ruined, and so I just threw it in the fire. Um, but the real interesting part that I really wanted to get to, it was just kinda like what I call like a God wink, or just it was just something that, told me I was on the right path with this bow making. I had no idea who Ed Scott was, and at the time, I had no idea that I knew some of his relatives who live, in the same town I currently live in now, which is Avon Park, and my wife and I, we moved to this piece of property where her dad owned about 20 acres, and later on, throughout the years of bow making, I found out that Ed Scott would have technically been the neighbor to where my wife's father lives,
No way.
and I found a video of him on YouTube, and he talked about how he would hunt rabbits. And then I got into contact with one of his, I think he's like great nephew or something like that, but a little further along the line. And he's like, I have these bows that Ed Scott made. And, at first I didn't think it was the real Ed Scott and never put anything together. And turns out, I go over to his house, I meet him, and he pulls out these bows, and it's literally the identical type of drawing that Ed Scott did. Had a signature on there and everything. It was a hackberry bow, and it was about 2.25 inches wide, and it was similar to a mogul bet on the tips.
Yeah.
Um, and he strung it, and I noticed it was lifting a splinter on it,
Mm.
and so I was like, "Well, don't string it." And turns out I ended up doing a repair on that bow for him, and I actually got to shoot that bow. So I actually
Wow.
literally got to shoot one of Ed Scott's bows, and turns out, the saying I always say is like you can say that I walked in Ed Scott's footsteps, truly, because we were hunting the same piece of property. Um, and it was just a really, really cool, like, I just felt like I was truly on the right path from that moment on. And, that's my all time favorite bowyer. If you ever get a chance to look at his stuff, I mean, it's truly incredible craftsmanship. And it seemed like he was really into the Native American, just ways of life, but also, he used a lot of their styles of bows in his construction the way he would do it. So just
That is
super,
so
super
cool.
cool. And then from that point on, I just kind of gathered inspiration from a lot of these really well-known bowyers, and, just learned a lot of these cool tips and tricks along the way. But I later, I would say maybe about 4 years ago, um, I kind of just started diving into my personal self and my life and started doing a lot of reflecting. And so that's when I feel like my bow making really truly stood out and kind of just developed from there, because it was truly coming from within, and the art was truly coming out, and the flow was just happening. And I try to operate in that space when it comes to my bow making quite regularly. But I'm very grateful for, you know, the internet and having access to all these other just phenomenal bowyers who are so willing to share their knowledge and the way they do things.
That's so cool, man. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the work of the heart coming out, it's such a beautiful thing, and so many bowyers experience that. And I think it would be really hard for people who haven't carved a bow to actually
Absolutely.
even understand what that is, but the therapeutic impact of carving a bow, it's tremendous.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Seriously. Yeah, that's my go-to. But I learned very quickly on, if I was not in the right state of mind or if I was stressed, I've learned from past bows that I've ruined, I've learned when to step away, when to
Yeah.
just put in a corner and when to come back.
Yeah.
When the right time is to come back and truly allow that wood to be utilized for many, many years down the road instead of just diving in and trying to force this thing to be what I want it to be. I learned that there's a relationship between the bowyer and the tree and the wood, and that tree has spirit just as much as we do. And so just having that constant communication back and forth through the entire process, like that is what truly draws me to bow making so much, and I found so much about myself in making self bows, and so the art of the self bow to me is like the art of self reflection. But there's just this beautiful relationship between humans in that aspect of bow making.
Yeah. The very first bow I carved was on a men's retreat. I bought my first bow from Jamie McDonald of
Awesome.
Ravenbeak Nature Works in British
Love
Columbia. And at the same time, I was creating curriculum, I guess, for men's retreats. And I got this bow and I started shooting and fell in love with it. I'm like, I need to learn how to make this. And so I reached out to Jamie to see if he would be willing to have me bring like my men's retreat there. And my idea was during the day we would carve bows, and then at night we would do some of the other, internal work that we were going to be doing. And Jamie was up for it, and so I ended up doing a few retreats there before COVID happened. And the men, had such an incredible experience being able to carve bows, and a lot of them were, as we were
it.
peeling away layers of our psyche at night, we would then go into the workshop in the morning and like peel away layers of the wood. And so it was kind of like a self discovery at the same time we were discovering how to
Absolutely.
work with this wood and create these bows that we could then keep as, beautiful mementos and of the experience, and just obviously so much more than that. So
Absolutely.
it was
I
really
could
a great
totally
experience.
relate to that. That's beautiful, man.
Yeah. So you're at Avon Park, so that's in what, Central Florida?
Yep. Yep, pretty
Okay.
much, almost like kinda close to dead center.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And what do you hunt there?
specifically whitetail. That's like my primary, that's been my primary goal since I started. Occasionally, I've taken a couple hogs here, lots of rabbits when I first started out. That was like the primary thing I hunted. I had a beagle, and he was the coolest dog ever, and I had a really cool experience with him the first time we went hunting, and ended up missing that rabbit when I shot, but, it was just such a cool experience. The dog ran around. I thought he was gonna run across the street into the dairy, and he, literally found a scent and brought the rabbit to me. Like, he brought the
Huh.
rabbit right to me, and I just couldn't believe it. I just literally could not believe there's a rabbit 10 yards in front of me, and I drew back on it, shot right over his head and missed. Um, but I mean, I was hooked from that point on. Um, I actually just finally got my first white-tailed deer December 16th, and it was with this bow behind me, here.
Okay.
I made that bow a little over 3 years ago, and the same arrow that's on that quiver right now is the same exact arrow I shot that deer with. He's a little
Nice.
4 point, but I got him at about 10 yards
Wow.
sitting up in a tree, and so there's no tree stand there. The tree just grew at a perfect angle to where you can walk right up the side, about 16 feet up. It was a perfect tree branch, about 10 inches in diameter that I could sit on, and it had a 8 or 9-inch diameter tree where my feet just fit perfectly on like a seat, and then there was a branch that just comes right around my back, and so the only thing
Wow.
was that it's at an angle, so it'll hurt your back in,
Yeah.
a couple hours of sitting there, but it was a really cool experience, and, I just could not believe the arrow was, like, went completely through this deer, was stuck in the ground, and, I just watched the deer as he ran off, and once the nerve settled and I realized what was going on, I looked down and there's just an arrow in the ground just covered in blood.
Wow.
He ran about 60 yards. So, but I was able to get my first one then. It was, man, that was such a great experience. And the cool thing
Hmm.
is I've got that deer on the property where I teach at. It's a 40-acre campus, and 15 of it's like dedicated to the school, and the other is just undeveloped and it's still very natural. Oak hammock. It borders a really big swamp that just runs north and south of the property, and so those bucks were coming in from the swamp. Um, and we had an unusual season this year because I mean there were like literally every oak tree dropped acorns at the same time, and that typically doesn't happen. It's like a couple drop every other year or so, but I mean it was just the property was littered with acorns. It was really cool.
So what do you teach at this school?
My first 2 years there, I taught first grade, and now I'm the agriculture teacher this year.
Agriculture.
Yep. So I
Okay.
teach agriculture. We have practical arts at that place as well.
Yeah.
There's industrial woodworking, and we also have orchestra as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
What is your background with agriculture?
So I actually worked in industrialized ag for 10 years. And so I guess you could say I have 10 years of experience on what not to do.
Yeah.
So, I learned the hard way. And my wife's dad owns a company where, they spread fertilizer, and these trucks, they're highway trucks we converted into these spreader trucks. And, um, I learned a lot of mechanic work, fabricating, welding, a lot of those stuff along the way, fence building, repairs for farm animals. But yeah, so I have about 10 years of experience in industrialized ag, and this is my first year teaching it in school in a sustainable way.
So when you say it's sustainable, are you teaching permaculture practices or?
So there are some areas on the property that are somewhat permaculture style of agriculture, but it's mainly just conventional gardening right now. But we also have farm animals on the property. We have goats, rabbits, pigs, and chickens. Lots
Hmm.
and lots of chickens. And so we actually processed quite a bit of rabbits this year with the students.
Yeah.
So
And
about
and
50 straight up.
in what way is it sustainable, what you're teaching? How's it differ
So
from the industrial ag?
with industrialized ag, you're constantly consuming, you're constantly having to buy, and it turns out you're actually spraying a lot of the medicine that's out in the pastures. Um, And so you're constantly going to have to rebuy your fertilizer every year to fertilize your pastures. And that fertilizer only lasts about 30 days, and then it's pretty much just gone. Whereas what we're trying to do is we're composting all of our vegetables that are finished off. We start our own compost piles. We just try to use the poop and manure from the animals, and we incorporate that into our compost. And we kind of take somewhat of a biodynamic farming approach to it. So yeah, we're just mainly trying to reuse everything and we're trying to the things we are using, we're trying to accumulate off of that property alone. We're trying our best not to resource compost from other places. We're trying to utilize everything that's on the property, and then just have it all in one big cycle where we add the farm animals into that. Um, and again, just doing our absolute best not to outsource anything off of the property.
Oh, that's
So
so
it's
cool.
it's been a struggle for sure. But we've done everything we could this year, and this being my first time teaching it, there's been a huge learning curve to it. I'm very passionate about it, and so when I first started teaching, I was a little naive and thought, well, if I'm passionate about it, these kids are going to love it too, and that's not the case. And so it's been a struggle. Um, Trying to express the importance of sustainable agriculture and why it means so much, not only for us but for them as well.
Yeah.
Because we don't want them to grow up and just consume and consume and consume and just source everything from big box stores and Walmart and Costco and all these places. To me, it's trying to just express that importance of everyone should know this. Everyone should be doing these things naturally, and
Well,
it's
they
a good
used
way
to
to
know those.
help. Exactly. It's a good way for you to sustain yourself and your family.
Yeah.
It's like you know where your food's coming from, and it's a really beautiful thing because it's like you start to understand when the time is to plant, and it almost just becomes instinctual where you don't have to look at calendars. You just know, and you're so present with the land, and you're there, you're barefoot, you're in the soil, and you're working with it. Um, but it just becomes a part of who you are, and you pay attention to the cycles of nature, and to me, that's one of the truest forms of a healthy human being is, people always ask me that question all the time, about health and stuff. And it's like, to me, to be truly healthy, you know, plants have their own intelligence, and it's like they know when it's time to bloom. They know when it's time to go dormant. They know when it's time for regrowth, because there's a relationship between the cosmos or the heavens or the skies with Earth, and it's speaking to us. You can see it if you pay attention, but that relationship has always been there. And so for me, trying to teach them to tune into that, and see that there's always this conversation going. But to be truly healthy, you're eating what is growing in your specific area at a specific time, because that is truly what the body needs, in my opinion. That's the way I like to look at it.
That's so rewarding, man. That's awesome that you're doing that. My wife and I have a 10-acre organic farm on Vancouver Island. We've had that for like probably a dozen or so years. And just being able to grow food for our family and our friends
Absolutely.
around us, it's been so incredible. And I used to, we don't spend as much time there anymore, but when I'm there, like every meal begins by me walking through the garden and just
Oh,
seeing
absolutely.
what's
Yeah,
available. What am I going to use today? So yeah,
absolutely.
how old are the kids who you're teaching?
So I teach from first grade all the way up until high school,
Yeah.
so 12th
And
grade.
do you find the high school kids are more interested in the younger kids or
Absolutely not.
no?
Complete opposite.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
and so my experience is the first and second graders who are interested in absolutely everything. Um, the older you get up into the grades, the more backlash you get, the more it's like, why are we doing this today? Not again. But with first and second, they're so willing to learn, and they're such a sponge at that age. But you could literally go and shovel goat poop, and they would be totally content with that and super excited, and they do a great job at it as well. Um, so yeah, I would say the younger kids are more teachable, because I feel like the older they get, they kind of get stuck in their ways a little bit.
Yeah. Wow. Wow, it's so cool what you're teaching. It's so important. So at least you're getting them at a young age. So hopefully when they get to be in high school, it'll be something they're still interested and
A- a-
curious about.
Absolutely. And, we're such a new school that, a lot of our students came from public schooling, and,
So it's a
so they,
private school where you are?
yep, yep.
Okay.
Um, and so, yeah, but again, a lot of these older kids have come from public schooling, and, from my understanding, everything's done on laptops these days, and they're still confined in these tiny little rooms with artificial air, artificial lighting.
Yeah.
They're not really taught much. They're just taught how to recite and how to remember and just repeat what they've been told. Like with our approach, so we're a Waldorf inspired school.
Nice. Okay.
And so we kind of rely on Rudolf Steiner's philosophies and stuff quite heavily. My wife and I, especially, it's pretty much what we were already doing with our kids before I found this school. But just again, trying to just teach them at a very young age how to think for themselves, instead of just doing what they're told. I think that's very, very important in today's day and age. And, that's how we build, build a strong generation that's coming up. We want a generation of thinkers and not just doers, people
Hmm.
who just do what they're told. So again, really, really cool experience for us and my family, and it's been a blessing because my whole family goes there. My wife is an early childhood teacher,
Oh, wow.
which is pre-K, and so both of our boys are in there with her as well.
How old are they?
So 5 and 2.5.
Wow.
Yep. So we're still a young family, and we're figuring it all out. Um, but it's been so good for our oldest. When he was born, we found out about 3 days later that he had bacterial meningitis,
Wow.
and so it was already in his brain and in his spine at the time, and he was pretty much lethargic, and we thought we were going to lose him. Long story short, that was November of 2020. So that's kind of like peak COVID, and everyone's wearing masks, and it's crazy around this time, and we ended up spending the next 2 weeks of his life back in the same hospital he was born at. And then turns out he had a tongue tie, so we had to get that taken care of later on. I mean, we learned so much from that. They told us he would be on the spectrum. He'd have autism and just all these ailments. As young parents, we just chose not to believe it, and we just kind of followed our gut and our intuition. And of course, they wanted us to take the pharmaceutical route. But my wife found out about a woman who does acupuncture in Winter Haven, which is about 45 minutes northwest of us, and we tried that for the first time, and just hearing all the stuff she had to say, we were like, whoa, this is like I never knew any of this stuff. And we were a surrogate for him, so they would give us the needles. He would just have to be within 10 feet of us.
Wow.
And at first we're like, this is like crazy, and prior to that, for about 2 months, he stopped like communicating, and everything was bust. He would point at everything and everything was just bust. And so that's when we started to get a little worried, and so we kinda got desperate, and that's when my wife found out about the acupuncture. We go for a 45-minute treatment, and on the ride home, it was on a full moon too, and, it was fairly late because our appointment started at about 5 or 5:30 or something like that, and so we're heading home, and I'm driving in the car, my wife's in the passenger seat, and my son, Hopi, is behind us, and he just randomly said, "Mom, Dad, moon." And
Wow.
I literally almost cried. Like, I mean, I was just so blown away, and I was just like, "What?" Like, this is like that's the first 3 words he had said in months. And so we went back a week later, did another treatment, and then we went back a week after that, and we found out my wife was pregnant, so she could no longer be the surrogate because I have a huge phobia of needles. Like, I am absolutely terrified of needles, and so I had to start doing the treatments, and he just kept getting better and better, over the course of a month and then 2 months, and, um, he just got so well, we just haven't been back since. And so but now it's like you can't even tell. I mean, he's super healthy, he's climbing trees all day at school and just monkey bars, and, like, he's just a full-fledged, just free spirit now, and just it's truly was one of the most magical moments of my life
Wow.
experiencing.
I got chills,
So we've
buddy. What a story.
yeah, we've had a lot of those moments in our life, and
Yeah.
just always try to be very grateful, because you just never know, when it's your time, and just do our best to be grateful and try to give back to the community as
Yeah.
much as possible.
In a former life, I did podcasting about holistic medicine. I am an acupuncturist, and I had
Oh,
a
really?
college that,
See, this
eh,
is this is so
yeah,
crazy. Like how just life just it's so amazing.
yeah. And so
This is awesome.
I had a college in Canada where we taught holistic medicines. Um, but here in Costa Rica. I do acupuncture on a daily basis, and it's
Wow.
I am still, after 25 years of doing it, I'm blown away pretty much on a daily basis by the results that I get.
Yeah,
And I'm just like, how did
absolutely.
that just happen? Like I've seen it before. I kind of expected it, but still, I'm like, how did that happen? I don't even know.
Absolutely. The story that the woman who did the acupuncture, her story was just incredible. I'll make this very brief, but her daughter was in a severe accident, and they told her she'd be a vegetable the rest of her life. She'd need you to drive, like you would have to go get her groceries. She'll never be able to cook. She'll never be able to have kids.
Yeah.
Like she would just need to be cared for. And so this woman was a delivery nurse for 20 something years, at a hospital, and she was going to all these specialists trying to find all these top guys or whatever, and they were all saying the same thing, and she just would not accept that as the reality. And so she found out about acupuncture. I think she even went to China, if I'm not mistaken. And so she went somewhere over in that area, and they started doing acupuncture on her daughter, and her daughter has like a couple kids now. She's driving, she's taking care of herself. And she said when that happened, she quit the job working in the hospital, and she started up that practice, and she's been doing it ever since.
Wow.
And she's never left.
Yeah.
So when she told us that story, I was just like blown away. I was like, oh my gosh. And then for us to actually experience that, wow, I mean, what a blessing. There's so much wisdom in the ancients that has been pushed away or buried,
Mm.
for so long. And I truly believe we're at a turning point in humanity where the pendulum is now coming back. and people are starting to wake up to this reality that we're in. Um, and I think before too long, I think we're gonna experience uh, a beautiful time in our lives.
Hmm.
I think you and I will get an opportunity to experience that, and that's the goal, anyhow.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
My daughter, who is co-wrote this book with me and took all the photographs. She's 15, and when she was born, she had an umbilical prolapse, and she didn't breathe for the first 11 minutes of her life. They actually pronounced her dead before she
wow,
started breathing. And then, similar to what you just said, we were told she was going to be a vegetable. She would never function. She was on what they called life support at the time. They told us, just pull the plug. There's no point in trying to save her. But my wife and I just like you said with your son, my wife and I just knew, like in our very core, we knew she was perfectly healthy individual, and we just wanted to give her a chance. And so we kind of busted her out of the hospital and just went our own route and did holistic things. And she's a brilliant, perfect human being. Like at 15, she traveled the world with me taking photographs for this book. But it's,
wow,
people have to, I think people need to hear these stories so they know, like, don't just take the word of the so-called experts from the medical
right,
system, because the medical system, for all its great strengths, it's incredibly flawed, and it is a money
absolutely,
based machine. And so
absolutely,
everything around it is about how do we make more money, which means keeping people sick, because healthy people don't make money for the
absolutely,
medical system.
absolutely.
So, well, I'm so happy you're being able to impact lives this way, helping your students to see different ways, and helping, having that impact in your family too. I feel like there
Absolutely.
needs to be more of us, so keep up the
Absolutely.
good fight.
To make this more interesting, my wife is actually a professional photographer.
Oh, yeah? Nice.
Yeah, it's so crazy how our stories are so intertwined.
Yeah,
It's giving me the chills now.
yeah,
But I tend to meet people like this very often,
yeah.
where just our stories are very similar. And yeah, it's just that's been the story of my life since as far as I can remember from the time I was a little kid. I've always had these really amazing experiences where I'd meet random people within 5 minutes. They're literally just telling me their life story, and like we just become such great friends.
Hmm,
And um, normally, just always having very deep, intimate conversations with people. I try. I'm just not the type of person who's into the really shallow stuff. I love life so much, and my mentality is it's either 100% yes to life or nothing at all. So you take all your wins, your losses, all the good, the bad, however you want to look at it. And to me, it's such a blessing to be able to feel happy, sad, all those things because think about it I think about it this way, like, we're so finely created by the creator or the universe or God or whatever it is you believe in, I think we're all talking about the same thing, or some people just call it the source.
yeah.
How just divinely made that we are, and so I like to think of it in this way too is, I'm not a very religious person, I consider myself more spiritual, but you hear in the Bible often, about you die and go to heaven. And my saying is like, how is it that we don't know we're in heaven now? Because we have the ability to think, to feel, to create, and to live here in a physical body.
Hmm.
And so I always try to wake up with that mentality.
That's
What is
beautiful.
it that we could do today to make this place better than what it was yesterday? And
Absolutely.
oftentimes, it's not about going out and giving these big motivational speeches and trying to change people. All you have to do is live that within yourself, and people can truly feel that. And that is how we change the world. It's
Yeah.
not always, oh, we got to go and we got to talk to this person, we got to do all these events. I don't think it's like that. I think how you feel on the inside is projected outwards. And people, as human beings, we have that ability to pick that up within each other, And so, again, how I, that's how my mentality is and how we can better the world.
Mm, it's beautiful. Yeah, and it begins from within. Like, we've got to look after ourselves, and
Absolutely.
I don't think there's really such a thing as being selfish when it comes to improving yourself, because only when we've really done the work and have done the inner reflection and made the changes? Are we capable of really having a positive impact outward? So
Absolutely.
my wife and daughter and I were talking the other day, and my wife was just starting a sentence by saying, "In a perfect world," and then she went on to say whatever she was saying, and my daughter said, "Mom, it is a perfect world, so let's just make that happen." It's like, yeah, that's right.
Absolutely.
It's like, this is our
Absolutely.
world. Like, this is what we're given. This is our opportunity. So I'm with you. I'm
Absolutely.
not waiting for something better on the other side, whatever that may be. I'm making the best of every moment, every day.
Absolutely. And believe it or not, my children are the one who made me really come to these realizations, you know?
Oh, I believe it.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think that, we're all born with gifts and we come into this world. And because of the old paradigm, I believe that we pass our traumas on to our kids and the way we think the world is, but we are the ones who are dumbing them down. They're already smart, they're already brilliant, and they
Yeah.
come with such
Well, they're
beautiful spirits.
fully connected, and
Absolutely.
it's
It's like they
it's
become more detached as they
yeah,
get older
yeah,
if they're in the wrong environment.
yeah, and
Which
that's
is which in the case has been for most of us,
most.
but
Hmm.
I think of our parents did their absolute best with what they knew or they thought they knew.
Hmm.
But again, that's what I mean when I say we're on that tipping point where people are waking up to this realization. I think we're probably going to have more homeschooled children than ever in the years to come.
Yeah, I was shocked and devastated when we were traveling through Europe to find out homeschooling is illegal in most countries, like
Wow.
fully illegal. Kids have to be in the public school system, otherwise you run the risk of losing your kids. I was
Wow.
just like,
You got to
what?
keep feeding the machine over there, apparently.
Ah, it was so saddening to hear that. It just country after country we
Absolutely.
went to. So
I had no idea.
yeah, I didn't either. And you can't bow hunt in most of those places either. So there you go. It's like they're truly trying to control everything and control the food, control the education, control the
Yeah.
way we think. And yeah,
I'm starting to like America a little bit more now.
it does have some good points. Yeah.
Yeah.
I could talk all day with you about this, but why don't we bring it back to bows and archery? Because I think the audience probably
Absolutely. Yeah.
is pretty excited about that. Um,
Okay.
you said you shot your first deer with a bow behind you. What is it?
So this bow here, I can actually probably pull it off the wall real quick. I don't know how well it'll show up in the screen, but so this piece is made from a single piece of Osage orange.
Yeah.
Um, I got some black walnut tip overlays on there. This is what I call my reflex deflex
Yeah.
design, and you can still see how fairly reflex these limb tips are. And
Yeah.
I've bought this bow probably more than any bow I've ever owned. I've had it strung on some days for 10 hours at a time.
Wow.
And, if you're familiar with Florida, it's hot, it's humid.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a really good design. This used to be one of the fastest bows I ever made for like a 10 grain per pound arrow. When I first made it, it was shooting at like 173 feet per second.
Hmm.
But I got it's some I think it's like alligator print leather on there for the wrap, but a fairly small handle. You can see how narrow that handle is. Again, I didn't have a ton of knowledge on how to deflex the handles back then, so I thought I had to make them um, with less material so I could actually get them to bend properly. But turns out I figured out a new way to do that. But again, it's a beautiful piece of wood. There's no cracks or anything like that, no defects on there. It's a phenomenal shooting bow. If you're familiar with like the fiberglass laminated deflex reflexes, I think those ones are a little faster, but for all natural piece of wood, that's plenty. It's 45 pounds at 28, if I didn't say that already, which to me is plenty for Florida for what I'm trying to do. I would have no issues, or I would not doubt that bow at all shooting a hog with it. But yeah, beautiful bow. I love it. Probably one of the one behind me is now my new all-time favorite, but this used to be that one.
What is the one behind you?
So that one is what I call. So again, I call this one just a deflex reflex. Most people call it a reflex deflex, but I always deflex the handle first and then reflex the tip. So that's why I'm always saying deflex reflex.
Okay.
But yeah, a lot of guys are just like, no, it's reflex deflex online. But I'm just like, well, we're talking about the same thing. You know, if I didn't mention earlier, this is the same exact arrow before I get to that bow. This is
Yeah.
the same exact hunting arrow that I shot that deer with.
Yeah.
There's a tiny bit of blood on the feather still. So this was one of my favorite designs at the time. You know, I felt really proud of this when I first made it. Um, it took a couple of years to develop the right amount of reflex in it, and it turns out it was my kitchen table the entire time. Like it was a circular table, and so I just kind of made a form out of a 2x6. The first couple attempts and the tips would be way behind the handle after I tillered them out, and I just wasn't getting the performance that I wanted, and I really wanted those tips to sit forward of the handle. Um, and I had a bow that, you know, I shot in, and like I said, the tips when I unstrung it, the tips were not where I wanted them to be. So I brought the bow inside. We went to go eat lunch, and I sat the bow on the table, and I'm just sitting there eating my lunch, and I happen to just look back and I look at the table and see the curve in it, and then I look at the bow and I look at the table again. I was like, "That's interesting." I grabbed it and I put it up against the table, and it literally had what I thought was like the perfect amount of reflex. And so I ended up asking my wife, and that table was there when we moved into the house, by the way. So it's just we didn't buy it or anything. Um, and I asked her, "Can I use this for a form?" And she's like, "Yeah, sure." And you know, at the time, I didn't take into consideration using the heat gun and that varnish being on the table, so it stunk up the entire house. But I was able to get one limb wrapped around. There was no tear outs on the belly, and I was like, "I think this is gonna be the one." And so I let it cool, do the other limb, tiller it out, and long behold, that became the new design. So I grabbed a form, put it under the table. I traced, can't remember how long it is, but I traced a certain piece off of there, and that's the form I use for all these bows, and I've used that ever since. So phenomenal shooting bow. You know, a lot of people were telling me the limbs were going to give back and they would straighten out, but this is a true testament. You know, that Osage is just a phenomenal bow wood, and if it's tillered correctly, it will keep majority of that reflex in there. This one's about 3/4 inches wide, and it just tapers down to about, I think it's about 1/4 inch knocks. So all my styles of bows that I do, when it comes to the limbs, I always do pyramid. That has been my all-time favorite. I feel like I get my better tillers on that style, and I also have some of my, and again, I know speed isn't everything, but when I do the pyramid design on the limbs, I always get phenomenal performing bows.
Hmm.
Um,
Now I heard you say
so
3/4 inch wide, but you must have said inch and 3/4, right?
that's what I meant. Yeah, sorry.
Okay,
Yeah, inch and 3/4 wide, and it tapers down
got
to
it.
1/4 inch knock. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's kind of been my go-to with Osage. You know, a lot of people that I know, they build them really narrow, about 1.25 inches wide or so. For whatever reason, I've always wanted to build them wider, but they still perform well. They hold up well. And I don't remember exactly how thin the limbs are. I don't know how well it's going to show in there, but these are really thin,
Yeah.
you know, limbs. But again, phenomenal shooting bow. I love it. I know I'm rambling, but again, sorry, but
Rambling about bows. That's what we're here for.
yeah. Oh yeah. And so this um is what I call my Cape Buffalo. And so over the years, it was about 2019 when I really started diving into my heritage and wanted to know more about Native Americans and stuff. And, you know, just spent a fair amount of time doing research online and watching YouTube videos. And, you know, pretty much just about every tribe just has a relationship with animals. And so I was like, I want to, you know, make a bow, but I want to name it after an animal. And so I kind of just started looking around, and um, I think I was actually watching a video of somebody doing a Cape Buffalo hunt online or on YouTube, and I was like, "Wow, that's pretty cool." And then I saw the horns, and it's like, I want to try to design a bow after the horns of the Cape Buffalo. Granted, you know, on a Cape Buffalo, the ends of their horns are very drastic, you know, and that's not realistic to put on a functional bow, but that's how this bow's birth
Yeah.
was after the horns of the Cape Buffalo. So if you held it this way, it would look like
Right. I
the
can see
horns of a
that. Yeah.
Cape Buffalo.
That's cool.
But I also was, you know, again, I'm not very educated when it comes to bow making. Like you know, there's guys who can recite word for word the Bowyer's Bible. I think I own volume 1 and maybe 2, but I would just always look up what I needed at the time, the information that I wanted. Um, I'm honestly not a big reader at all. I'm a visual learner, and so watching YouTube videos has been the biggest benefit for me. But yeah, just kind of just trying to figure all this out, and what truly worked for me versus what everyone else was doing.
Hmm.
And, I really had no intentions of trying to be different, but I just felt that calling like this can be done differently, and we can make self bows that are going to perform just as good as glass bows, if not a little better. And that's kind of, how I think when it comes to this, but I had to learn from trial and error because I don't know anybody who's making anything remotely like this, with the amount of deflex and the recurve in there. But the other thing is, I used to have like a 68-inch longbow that I would hunt with. It was made from Osage, and it would get caught on everything here in Florida. The salt palmettos, you name it, oak tree limbs. It would smack those, and I actually lost opportunities on game shooting at them, and then the limb smacking tree branches and stuff. So I was like, how can we make these smaller? And everyone was saying, well, you can just do a bend through the handle bow. But I don't personally, I don't like the feeling of shooting a bend through the handle bow. I've never shot an English longbow before, so I don't know if that would be different. Um, but I didn't want to have that, and so I kind of just like, well, how is it that we can make this shorter without stressing the limbs too much? And then I started looking into the stuff about fiberglass laminated bows, and it talked about having the deflex in the handle, having the forward handle, and just kind of put a little of all this together. But the big thing was trying to figure out how to get this huge section to bend without tearing out or cracking or breaking. Um, but the heat bending honestly came from a different trade. And so we were not building, but we would heat bend 2.5 inch conduit when I was in solar. And we would have to do this inside of people's attics.
Hmm.
And so I'm not sure if you're familiar with wire electrical or whatever, but if you have any kinks or whatever in your pipe, you're not getting you're not getting that wire through. It'll get hung up in that area. So there were times where we had to bend 90-degree angles with this 2.5 inch conduit.
Right.
And keep in mind it's Florida, so I had to figure it out fast and how to do it efficiently. And those skills kind of just translated over into the heat bending with the Osage.
Hmm.
So that's why I prefer a heat gun over steam, over boiling. I just wipe the limbs down with vegetable oil. Um, and then I think the rest is just more of an intuition. So it's knowing where to put the heat, how long to keep it there, when to back it off. And if you put too much, you need to let it cool for a minute or two before you actually try bending it. Cause then you're going to get your tear outs. Then you're going to run into all your problems where you'll get delaminations, at the early growth rings. But very rarely do I ever get any tear out on the recurves. And I used to try to chase it down to a single growth ring on the belly to bend it to try to avoid that. But just over time, I've learned and just figured it out. Especially with the recurving, it's just you just have to kind of be really present, paying attention to what it is you're doing, knowing where to put the heat, and then some people tie like a weight to the end of the bow. I prefer to keep pressure on it with my hand because then I'm in tune with the wood and I can feel it. And putting heat in certain spots, I can tell it's going to bend there when I go to pull it. And so if you heat like too much of an area at one time, you'll get your lift out, your splinters, all those things. So again, it's just, I don't really know how else to explain it. I could teach it and I could show you what to feel for. If I'm there with you. But again, just to me, bow making is a lot about intuition, and so just getting in tune with what it is that you're doing, and what's in front of you, how to be present with that, having that relationship and that conversation with the wood. To me, that's how I was able to pick up on all this, if that makes sense.
Hmm. That's cool. What are some of the other unique features or trademarks of your bows?
Um, I mean, I try to use as much like natural materials as possible in my bows. Um, Again, I would say that one of the biggest things is just the heat bending
Yeah.
aspect.
Do you
But
put it
you're getting smooth draws out of these things. You're getting very, high arrow speeds. Um, but the rest, I think, is just all love.
do you put arrow shells on most of your bows or all of your bows?
No, I've always been had mixed feelings about that. Um, I tried to get away from it for a while, and then it was just hard to not do that because, I didn't wanna spend a ton of money on all these different spined arrows, and so cutting a shelf in was always just the easiest way for me to tune arrows, and, um, I kinda did things backwards when I made my bows. I would actually tune the bow to the arrow. And so, like, just cutting in a little bit at a time until I got the perfect arrow flight because I only had a certain amount of arrows. And so I was just trying to get those arrows to fly. And typically for me, I normally stay around the 45-pound at 28-inch mark. And so I think in doing that, I learned how to time the limbs without using, like, I don't like to use pulley systems at all. So maybe that's one thing we can talk about as to like what I think is different about mine is I haven't used a pulley system in probably 3 or 4 years now.
What do you mean a
I've actually always,
What do you mean a pulley
so like,
system?
see now people have, it's a pulley on the bottom of a rope. They connect it to the bow and it's mounted to a
To the
wall.
tiller
They
tree.
got all tillering tree. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay. All right.
So I don't use tillering trees at all.
Okay.
I bend everything over my knee, but it's all about feel.
Okay.
And so I think what again my mentality is so different. Like I typically don't even like to use the word stress when it comes to bow making because to me it's about balance.
Hmm.
The balance between the tension, and then the compression.
Oh,
To me, every time I hear the word stress, that's a hinge.
I lost your image. There it is.
Yeah, it's something just popped up
All right.
on my phone.
Well, that's
Um,
that's that takes a lot of sensitivity and skill, I'd imagine, to not tiller a bow the normal way.
Absolutely. And, again, I struggle with that so much in the beginning. And what I noticed is one, most of us use a small little hook and we used to put it right in the center of the bow, but that's not even where you're going to be pulling it from when it's finished.
Yeah.
And I noticed my tiller would change, my poundage would drop within the first couple hundred shots. But I just over time kind of just started leaning more towards no pulley systems at all. I use them only absolutely when necessary, but then when I gain the experience, I haven't looked back since, and
Hmm.
I don't use them anymore. To me, I feel like again, I think you could design them in a way to where it would make sense to where it'd be easier to tiller them, and that you won't get much change or poundage drop on them. But again, it's just going back to that intuition and seeing what's in front of you and just feeling it out. Feeling out how that it's like you can feel the energy in the wood, and how it's dispersed over the limbs. And I think just having that understanding, I've been able to develop and produce very consistent performing bows over the years. Um, but yeah, that's
So is
that's
it?
just kind of how I look at
It would be harder then for you to make a heavier bow, I would imagine, if that's the way you're bending them.
it. Yes and no. Again, because I do the 45 pounds majority. I've done it for several years before I actually like got into really trying to sell them. It was mainly because people would reach out and they were, "Hey man, will you build me a bow?" And I want it to be this poundage. And um, but I actually did 45 pounds for so long that it's like I could just tell. I could tell when it was really close, and I'd be very spot on. With I'm not trying to brag or anything, but it's like I rarely miss my target weight. It happens occasionally, but it's very, very rare. But with the heavier poundage bows, yes, it's a bit more challenging um, to hit that draw weight. But again, it's just going back to the feel of it, and just kind of just paying attention to everything.
Yeah. What type of wood is that bow that you're holding? The
This one
cape
here,
one.
Osage orange,
Okay. What do you use mostly?
Osage orange.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I really love black locust. If it's good quality black locust, to me it's hard to get the crystalline on the belly. It's just as dense as Osage, and to me it's a bit stiffer when you shoot. You can actually feel it more. I feel like Osage is a lot more elastic,
Okay.
and that good quality locust is just when it hits, it hits. It's obviously Osage is a lot more forgiving, but I primarily use Osage orange. That's like my go-to. I really enjoy the fire hardening process as well, if you're familiar with that. And hickory is probably one of my favorite whitewoods to work with. Believe it or not, it's very difficult for me to find good quality bow wood in the area that I live. It's just a giant sand knob, and majority of the majority of the property that has the perfect bow wood are state parks.
Yeah.
So, you can't harvest off of them, and the rest is just ranches. And so it's quite difficult to get permission from ranchers to go in and cut the wood. So I get a lot of my stuff imported, mainly from Missouri. My Osage anyway.
Hmm.
Uh, Phenomenal bow wood though. That's probably my absolute favorite.
Yeah. Is there any black locust growing in your area?
No, not that I've seen. I can imagine it grows in the northern parts of Florida,
Yeah.
closer to Alabama. But again, I've never seen it here where I live.
Hmm. And then what about the oaks? You ever use oak?
I have not messed with oak.
Yeah.
I think I may have cut one down, a small tree down, many years ago, and left the bark on, sealed the ends, came back to it like a year later, and it just had checks all on the back of the bow when I removed the
Hmm.
bark, and so I kinda never messed with it from that point on.
Yeah.
I
What?
have worked with white oak once.
Okay. What do you think, or do you know the historical bows from your area, from kind of Florida or the Southeast, were made from?
No, I mean, I've never really looked into it, but if I had to guess, a lot of people say cypress, but to me, I feel like why would they use the I mean, I get cypress is a softwood, and I have heard people making war bows, like war bow weight, 100+ pound pulls, but they were like 6.5, 7 foot tall bows. Um, but the way I look at it, I would think they would use hickory and the elm because we do have some elm here. I think it's red elm.
Yeah.
I don't think it makes the best performing bow, um, but it's something you can definitely fire harden
Yeah.
and use. So I have a student at the school who made a bow from one of the red elms that I cut down like 7 years ago,
Nice.
and there's no fire hardening on it. But we used a heat gun and just kind of heat treated the wood a little bit. But I mean, it makes a good bow. It did take a lot of set, but I mean, it held together just fine,
Yeah.
and they still use it at school.
I think for Project Quiver, I made 3 elm bows. I think 2 were witch elm, and I'm trying to remember. Maybe the other one was red elm, but they are all beautiful bows. And I made 3 with black
Absolutely.
locust as well. I really enjoy black locust. And that's one of those I made with Nacho Marco of
Okay,
in Spain.
I think I'm familiar with him.
Yeah, and he loves black locust, and
Yeah,
it says it's such a good teacher because it doesn't
absolutely.
tiller as easily as Osage orange, but if you do a good job,
Right.
it's a good bow. But I've learned a
Absolutely.
lot. It's cool with what I've learned in this whole experience. But a lot of the best bow woods are commonly used as fence posts, and so
Absolutely.
black
It's
locust,
heartbreaking.
Osage orange, like
Yeah.
there's so many. I think there's like half a dozen of them that are common, more than that probably. Lemonwood here in Central America, they're all used as fence posts.
Okay.
So
That's interesting.
that's pretty cool. And then black locust is great because it's such a fast growing tree, and
Right.
it's very easy to farm or to raise black locust to a big enough size to make bows with.
I
So
gotcha.
it's a pretty good sustainable bow wood if you got yourself some land and can wait a few years while you're growing some.
Absolutely.
What are your
For sure.
what are your go-to tools?
Go-to tools in today's world. I mean, I did get me a really nice Grizzly industrial sander. It's like a 6x80. I use that often, but the draw knife for sure and a Ferris rasp are still like my go-to. And I probably use a card scraper more than I should on a bow build, but I'm just very particular
Why do you say more than
about
you
my
should?
because I could totally use a rasp
You could go
or
faster with something else, you mean?
absolutely.
Yeah.
But I love to slow down, and like I'm very meticulous with my work, and I'm very just I don't know if you want to say OCD or whatever, but like if I can't sell a bow if it has any defect in the
Yeah.
growth ring, or when I say defect in the growth rings, or just like a nick or something, like the back has to be absolutely pristine when I chase them. So the draw knife is the way to go for me. But if I see a scratch in there, like I will freak
Yeah.
out. So I want them to be completely just 100% just perfect, because I warranty my bows for 5 years. And
Oh,
so
wow, nice.
for me is I don't want them coming back because of something I overlooked. You can't always tell what's going on inside the wood, But but to me that's very rare, and I have a really good stave dealer who's been doing this for so many years, and I always call him a wood wizard.
Hmm.
But to me, I feel like he has a very good relationship with the trees, and there's no person that knows bowwood like him.
Wow.
Uh, and so, I kind of rely on him, and he's pretty much like my grandfather. I didn't get a chance to meet a lot of my grandparents. They all died when I was a really young age, so there was really no grandfather figure in my life. And when I met Jim at the Tennessee Classic many years ago, I mean, we just instantly went into deep conversation. And every time I call him to order wood, we always have at minimum like a 2-hour conversation. And then he's like, "Hey, what were you calling for bow wood again?" Like, absolutely. And I just tell him what I'm looking for, and I just trust him. He doesn't send any pictures. He just sends me the wood, and then I just go from there.
That's beautiful.
So
Yeah.
oh, yeah. So, just having those good quality relationships with people too, it's, so important.
Yeah. And I learned too, as far as the tools go, like you say, you probably use a guard scraper more than you should, but I carved when I was with Per Frieden in Sweden. I carved an elm sapling bow and used almost entirely a card scraper, and that's his go-to tool. And it was just like
Yeah.
little bits at a time, but it's a great
Oh, yeah.
great way to really stay connected to the bow and to shape it. And then I don't know if you know
Right.
Chuck Loeffler in Salt Lake City with Heartwood bows. He makes beautiful Native American replica bows. He
Uh,
uses he uses a razor blade. You know, the little disposable
oh,
ones?
wow.
He holds
Yeah.
them in
Oh,
his
yeah.
finger because he's carving mostly juniper, so it's a softer wood.
Oh,
But
okay.
he
I
he
gotcha.
doesn't even
Makes sense.
he doesn't use card scrapers. I don't even know if he touches a draw knife. It's like this little razor blade that he's
Oh,
shaping
that's
his
insane.
bows. So yeah,
That's dedication.
each to their own, and his bows are gorgeous. They're amazing replicas.
Oh, yeah. So, like, by the time I finish a bow, and I do use a bandsaw occasionally. I have a really it's old to me, but I bought a Harbor Freight bandsaws, like, 8 years ago, and so it's very underpowered. It's like a 3/4 horsepower. Um, it's just like a very cheap, basic entry level one. So I use that, but honestly, I can use, if I establish my back, I can take a saw and just cut about 8-inch sections down to roughly where the line I want, and then take a hatchet and another big piece of wood, and I can pop off huge chunks. And so I can pretty much get my stave roughed out quicker than I can use it on my actual bandsaw that I have. Um, But again, just going back to the card scraper, like, I have to feel the wood, and my fingers are constantly on the back of the bow.
Yeah.
And so my main goal is to match the back as closely as possible to the belly. And so once I establish that the back of the bow after it's chased, everything is based off of that
Mhm.
that back. Like, everything is in relation to that. And like, if I have dips, everything, whatever, I try to match it as closely as possible. And so to me, from my experience, like, using a wood rasp, like, it's very easy to go past the mark, or or change
It
the
is.
contour or the shape. Whereas if I have that card scraper, and that's probably gonna be hard to see, and my fingers are always on the back of the bow, I'm using that in relation
Those are like your calipers.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so that's why what I mean when I say I probably use it a little more than I should. But again, I have to have it a specific way in order for it to bend the way I want and maintain a lot of that reflex without, um, getting too much set or string follow, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
Um, and one thing I did notice too about the way other people do their bows is, they'll have their bow on that tillering tree. They have it pulled, and then they have like a elliptical shape that they blew up.
Yeah.
And, they try to match it to that. And so, like, I don't think of it in that term, because if you have reflex or a straight limb bow, you're taking something straight and you're trying to make it distribute the forces of tension and compression evenly throughout the limbs. Um, and 9 times out of 10, they pop back straight for me, and they stay that way for years. Um, but I feel like people try to shape them a certain way, and when they have a finished bow, it already has string follow, so it's not gonna last as long, in my opinion. Um, but again, just trying to take, like, I mean, this is obviously not a straight shape, and it's a little more sophisticated, but, I try not to use anything other than what's in front of me and what I'm feeling and what I'm seeing with my hands. But again, it's just about that balance of that force, the forces of tension and compression distributed through the entire piece of wood.
Hmm.
So every time you drop the string, the limbs are always in time together, but you get consistent performance similar to a fiberglass laminated
Mm.
bow,
All right.
if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
Are you mostly making now like the Cape Buffalo type of bow, or do you every time you make a
It's
bow, are you making different styles?
as of late, everybody's wanting a Cape Buffalo now,
Okay.
and so that's been like the hot bow on the shelf right now. And just back to back customers are asking specifically for this model.
Okay.
So they see something in it that they truly like, but this bow is only 60 inches tip to tip.
Oh wow.
So it's a fairly shorter bow, but I mean, I've made this style 55 inches tip to tip, and I've tailored them out to 29 inches. And one of those bows was black locust. I had to send you the reel about how defective that back was. It had a huge wave in it, and I was still able to make the like almost 90-degree curve in it. There's no chrysalis in it, and it was for a left-handed shooter. But that was a really good quality of black locust. From what my mentor told me, Jim, if black locust has black streaks running up and down the grain, that's the sought after black locust. That's the really good stuff.
Hmm.
And it's dark. Darker black locust, the brown color is dark and it has these beautiful black streaks in the grain. That's the really good dense stuff. But the lighter color stuff, that's where you're gonna start seeing all your problems with the compression issues. And it's physically lighter in the hand. The wood is actually lighter. So if
Interesting.
whoever, is using that black locust, you're looking for the heavy dense stuff.
All right.
Um, just thought I'd throw that out
Yeah.
there.
Well,
I
it's
know I'm so all over the place, and so I apologize. It's been a long day at school,
not
and
at all, man. This is great. So how
it's hard for me to stay very on track. So please reel me back in because I could be here talking for hours
all
and
good.
days.
How do your customers find you?
Mainly on right now, they're finding me on Instagram, but my Facebook. So my Facebook is linked to my Instagram. So every time I upload a post or video to my Instagram, it goes straight to my Facebook. And as of late, the Facebook has been like just outperforming the Instagram, and I'm getting more reach through Facebook. And so I have a repeat customer from Switzerland. He wants this model now, but a two piece, and so that's going to be a challenge.
Hmm.
I've only ever made one two piece before, but anyway, so mainly Facebook and Instagram right now, and my YouTube channel has kind of been very dormant lately. I just recently started posting back on there again. But I would say within the last month, Facebook has been where everyone's been just messaging me and just wanting information and hey, I want the recurve, like,
Yeah.
how much is it and everything. And so I think, I've been very fortunate, but I think I'll have, 3 or 4 of these builds in the near future.
Nice. How much time do you spend carving bows on a
Oh,
like a weekly basis?
honestly, not a lot. Especially now having kids and
Yeah.
just working full time at the school. The school pretty much consumes majority of my time, and because I am the ag teacher, like I'm literally there 7 days a week, and on the weekends I'm still tending to the farm animals, feeding them, cleaning enclosures,
Right.
just addressing anything. But I would say on average, I'm probably getting about 5 to 6 hours
Okay.
in a 7 day week,
Yeah.
or a full 7 day week. Um, Less than I want, but if the universe allows it, I would love to do this more for my primary job. Just so I could be home with my kids. We could homeschool and just have slower mornings so that's the goal, trying to work towards that
Yeah.
for sure. But I could do this all day, every day.
Yeah.
Like this is the one thing that it never gets boring to me. Um, I'm always so just involved with what it is I'm doing, and I could wake up every day and be so happy knowing that this is what I'm going to do for the majority of my workday
Uh-huh.
is working on bows, crafting it, working with natural materials as much as possible, and still incorporating nature into my daily life, through the bow making.
Hmm.
But again, yeah, I would so love for that to become a reality, and that's what we're slowly but steadily working on. As I told you in the beginning of this, like I'm like one of the worst people when it comes to technology. So a website has been something on my radar for literally, I don't know, the past 5 years. And I just don't have the the what's the right word I'm looking for? I don't have it in me to just kind of go research how do I make a website, and I think I'm just about to get to the point where I'm just about to hire somebody to
Yeah.
make the website for me. But that would be ideal, is to have the website up and running in the near future.
It's shockingly easy now with the technology that's out there to make one. So we can chat about that later. But it's there's a lot of platforms that make it pretty much just pick the style that you like and start adding in your content and photos, and it's within an hour you can have something that's up and running.
Man, that makes me feel very lazy now.
Well, it's the reality of
Yeah.
it, and I'm always amazed at how much people charge to build websites. I'm like, what? Like, who's paying
Oh,
you that
really?
kind of
Yeah,
money?
I haven't even looked into that aspect yet.
Yeah,
I don't even know how much it would cost. I was thinking $200
oh
maybe.
man, I've spent for my previous businesses in holistic medicine. There was one that was over 100K.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
and I was like, oh man, how did this happen?
Holy
And it
cow.
still wasn't functioning the way we wanted it to. Still had all sorts of issues, but yeah,
Right.
do it yourself. You don't need anything fancy. And if your wife's a photographer, you'll have beautiful images.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, she normally does my finished products,
Nice.
and I just record with my iPhone throughout the process whenever I remember to. And a lot of times I don't record just because I'm so involved with what I'm doing,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to connect with nature and stay away from the
Of
technology.
course. Yeah.
As much as possible, but we have to use it. So it's not like I'm against it, but I try to use it as minimally as possible.
I understand completely. Yeah. I'm the same way. And, but I wouldn't be having conversations with people like you if I wasn't using some technology.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. They're a challenging thing to photograph. My daughter learned the hard way. That's like,
Oh yeah.
it is a hard subject to photograph. So
Well,
she took,
well, the pictures I've seen look amazing.
Yeah,
specifically the one where you had kind of all the bows in a circle, and it was like just the tips, or maybe the first third of them.
yeah.
That was pretty cool.
I have to take credit. That was my idea. She didn't.
Oh, okay.
She didn't think it was a good idea, but no,
I thought that was
there were a number of those where she was like, why are we doing this? And then afterwards, she's like, oh, I get it. Yeah. But that credit goes to Simon Sace in Germany. He has a beautiful website. What is he? Something primitive. Let me see if I can find him. Primitive.
I feel like I know who you're
Stonehill Primitive.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen work.
So
beautiful work.
Yeah, in my opinion, he's one of the best bowyers in the world. And unfortunately, we couldn't get him for the book. Talked to him a number of times about it, but he just wouldn't do it. But got some inspiration from some of his photos, and that was one of those that was inspired by his.
Absolutely. I if I remember reading, he like fumes his bows to get some of the colors that he has in them.
He's a
whatever that means. I mean, he's German, so those guys are super, super smart, crafty guys, and
he's a wizard. He's meant.
Yeah,
he served as a mentor to a few of the people who are featured in the book. But yeah, he said he just wasn't looking to take on any new projects. So, but
I got you.
Yeah, he's an incredible bowyer. But yeah, my daughter did a wonderful job with the photos, and yeah, we learned it took a while. I think she probably averaged around 2,000 photos per bowyer times 14 bowyers. So yeah, she was up in somewhere around 30,000 photos that we had to go through every single one and pick our favorites and whittle it down to like our top 10% and then down to our top like 2% for the book. So, and everything we're showing on social media, none of those are in the book. They're all, those are all kind of like our B grade ones. We're keeping all the best ones for the book. The only exception to that is the most recent like 5 posts I've done with black backgrounds of bows.
Okay.
Those are like a sneak peek of kind of the museum style photos that we have of the bows that I made while I was on the journey.
I gotcha.
Yeah. So
that's awesome, man. That's super cool that you're doing this too. I think it gives a lot of exposure to these phenomenal craftsmen and bowyers in general, and you get to some of the best people in the world.
Yeah.
So it's hard to beat that, man. You're living the dream.
It's been a win-win-win. That's for sure. I hope we get to do it again. I'm already like, volume 2. Yeah, let's. We got to get the first one out on the market first. But
for sure,
it's been such a joy to be able to do it.
Absolutely.
thanks for doing this, Steven. I feel like we could talk and talk and
Absolutely,
talk,
man.
which we'll have to do that some more.
Absolutely.
Where can people find more about you and your work?
So like I was saying earlier, mainly on Instagram and YouTube. So those are both under Provision Longbows. And then my Facebook is just my name, Steven Bieber.
Okay.
No relation to Justin. Just want to throw that out there.
All right. And why
I get asked that a lot.
you
So
look similar. Yeah, I get it.
right?
Yeah. Why Provision?
Yeah.
Where did that name come
So
from?
that's the name that my wife came up with.
Okay.
And so I asked her the same thing, and it's because, if I'm not mistaken, this was many years ago. But the conversation we had, I remember we lived in a fifth wheel at the time and doing the whole tiny living thing. But it is to provide something of use.
Mhm.
And so to me, just having these and providing something that not only is, has a lot of artwork involved in it, it's just fully functional and it's something that they could use to provide for their family if they chose to hunt with it. So it's just kind of, that's how that came along. But that was, my wife gets to take all the credit for that.
Okay.
Uh, I would have probably said Bieber bows or something, something very generic and just basic.
That's
But
cool.
yeah, so my wife came up with that name, and the whole reasoning behind that was just to provide something of use or value.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. You'll appreciate, probably you might be one of the few in the back of the book. I have an appendix on the different bow woods that we use to carve bows on our journey, and I also talk about the medicinal properties of
Okay.
the bow woods when there are no medicinal properties. So you might find that interesting.
Yeah, man. Whenever is that book already published, or are
No,
you
October.
working on that?
October it's
October?
released. Yeah, we're still working with the publisher. Kind of, I think we're probably only we're less than a month away, I think, from having it off to the printers. That's at least
Absolutely.
we're mostly done. Just final edits and tweaks, and so.
Can you pre-order those, or just waiting till
No,
they're
there will be pre-ordering. Yeah, we're going to be doing a
okay?
campaign through our Instagram and website. We were waiting till we got some proofs from the publisher so we could actually show some actual pages and the cover.
Okay.
And then we had our Instagram slowly growing, but then it got canceled back in January. We just went on there one day and it was like, yeah, it's gone. And we're like, what the hell? And so we had to rebuild, still rebuilding. So anyway, it backed everything off for us a little bit, but I don't want to give a date. Originally, we thought it would be February for the pre-sale, but I'm thinking it's going to be May, June, probably, before we do the pre-sale. But we will.
I'm very interested in getting myself a copy.
Awesome. Well,
so I'll keep up with the page and wait for the post for the pre-order, or just whatever, whenever you guys get it.
Thank you.
Going. I'd love to have a copy of that.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. I've seen the proofs of it. It blows me away. It's like 350 pages too. So
wow.
Yeah, it's a big, beautiful book.
So with a lot of knowledge and wisdom from a bunch of different guys from around the world. And yeah, I think a lot of people will find that even though we're from different parts of the world, we're still all very closely related, especially bowyers,
Yeah.
So I'm really looking forward to it, man.
Thanks, Steven.
I'm very grateful that you're doing that. So
thank you. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with me today. It's really been cool talking to you. And keep up the good work, man.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for listening to Project Quiver on Salish Wolf. Follow our journey on Instagram at Project Quiver as we seek out the world's most extraordinary traditional bowyers, and join our newsletter at projectquiver.com. Our coffee table book, Quiver, The Art of Life Through Bowcraft, arrives in 2026. We are honored to share with you the beauty, history, and magic of traditional archery.